So here's a video to go with the blog that I have about connecting and disconnecting from UCS Manager. So it's pretty brief. We're going to talk about connecting to UCS Manager, and these same tactics will work for UCS Central as well as the SimCs using IMC Power Tool. So to connect to UCS Manager, you just type in connect-UCS-name and then an IP address or a DNS name, host name. You get a pop-up dialog box, type in your credentials, and you'll get a connection. And then when you want to disconnect, disconnect-UCS. Pretty simple. When I connect to UCS, get the pop-up box, credentials, and my login successful. That information, or the session information, is stored in $default UCS. You can also retrieve it by typing get UCS PS session, and that will retrieve your UCS session connection information. And again, if I look in $default, that's where my session is kept. Now if I want to connect to another UCS, same methodology, IP address. I can actually make multiple connections to the same UCS or the same IMC or the same UCS Central, but I'm going to connect to a different one. I'll type in my credentials, and I get an error, because by default you're not allowed to connect to more than one UCS management endpoint at a time. But we can change this by using the set UCS Power Tool configuration. You can also see what that configuration is by using the get UCS Power Tool configuration, and we can see what our version is, where the Power Tool is installed. Do we support multiple default UCSs? Currently it's false. And what happens if we see an invalid certificate? Currently we ignore it. If I want to change this, I can say set UCS Power Tool configuration, support multiple default UCS, and we'll say that that's true. And now if I connect to the second UCS and I sit with my credentials, I'm connected, and when I run get UCS PS session, I actually get back 2 connections. Well, that's pretty cool, but when I run a query command, if I say get UCS blade, and I select the DNs that come back, the DNs of those objects, and perhaps even something like total memory, I get a bunch of things back. I actually get a bunch of chassis 1 and chassis 2 blades, but I don't know where they came from. So UCS Power Tool actually adds a UCS attribute or IMC attribute or UCS Central attribute to your queries or to the returned objects. So I can go ahead and hit enter, and I can see where those objects came from. These first few came from a UCS named SJC18L14 UCS Mini 1, and the others came from SJC18L14 UCS 1. So with multiple UCSs connected, or multiple UCS Centrals, or multiple IMCs connected, when I issue a command through UCS Power Tool, it actually goes out and runs in parallel. I'm going to go ahead and disconnect from the UCS, and all the connections that are in the default UCS connection variable will be disconnected. If you're using the IMC Power Tool or the UCS Power Tool, those default variables will be called default UCS Central or default IMC. Now you notice that the pop-up dialog box asks me for my credentials, and we may not want that. So we can say $UCSM credentials is equal to new object, and that object that we're going to be creating here is a Microsoft System Management Automation credential. So the new object has a type of System dot management dot automation dot ps credential, and we're going to supply the following arguments. We're going to supply a username, and in this case admin, and then the password that we're supplying, we're actually going to be we have to run the convert to secure string because the plain text password isn't allowed. And so we'll wrap that in a $paren construct so that it actually gets evaluated first. And we have to tell that we're supplying plain text. And to stop convert secure string from complaining about plain text, we're going to say force. With our credentials set, we're going to go ahead and use that to connect to UCS PowerTool. So we can say connect UCS-name, and here we'll just specify credential and the name of the credential file, UCSM credentials. And we connect. So great for automation because it doesn't pop up a dialog box asking us for those credentials. Now, we may in the future want to reconnect to this UCS but not want to enter in the credential information, and we can actually export this session to a file and then use that file to go ahead and connect in the future. And the way you do that is say export UCS PS session, and we have to tell a file name to go to, and I'm just going to send it to UCS sessions.xml. It is an XML file that gets created, and I have to supply a key for that, and this is also a secure string, so we're going to use that same methodology as before, convert to secure string as plain text, our password for this file. So this encryption is what this file is being encrypted, and that's what this key is for. I'm just going to say password, and again I have to say force because secure string doesn't like to use plain text. Oh, I can't do it in this directory, so let's fix that. I have a directory called UCS scripts, so let's put it there. And if we take a look at that file that was created, this is what we get. An XML file that has the UCS that we were connected to, the username, and the password encrypted. So now when I go ahead and disconnect from this UCS, so now when I want to go ahead and connect to that UCS manager, I can just say connect -UCS, but this time instead of specifying a name, I specify the path of the file, and the file name, and the key, and because the UCS that I'm connecting to is contained in that file name along with the encrypted password, once I give the key, the connection is made. So these constructs all work for UCS Central, UCS IMCs, or the SIMC Cisco Integrated Management Controllers, and for UCS Manager. If you want to, you can also create named connections. So we'll just do one more disconnect. And this time, we'll say that the UCSM connection is equal to connect UCS We'll also say it's not a default connection, so it doesn't get installed or stored in the default UCS variable. We could have used the credential object as well. But now we're connected. We don't get any feedback because the $UCSM credential, or excuse me, connection is holding the variable information. And now when I type disconnect UCS, nothing happens because the default UCS variable, in fact, doesn't even exist in this session anymore. However, if I say disconnect UCS-UCS or UCS Central or IMC, depending on which PowerShell library you're using, now I've disconnected. So those are a variety of ways of connecting and disconnecting. Again, everything that was shown for UCS Manager works for UCS Central, UCS Manager, and the IMCs, or the Cisco Integrated Management Controllers of the standalone servers. Thanks so much for watching. Hope this helps you out.